The six things Indians are duty bound, obliged to despise most. Do you want to know what they are? If you do, welcome, swagatham, vanakkam. If you listen to the detractors of Rahul Gandhi, you will very soon make a list of the bad qualities, weaknesses, and liabilities that an Indian should be very careful of and avoid zealously. I'm sure all of you would be interested in knowing what those demerits are. And I'm going to list 5 or 6 of them very briefly. Fortunately, they don't have to be explained in detail because it's been repeated, demonstrated, practiced, used, abused, overused for over 15 years. So everything is very clear, immediate, and transparent. I only have to mention them and then you will connect spontaneously and continue your own reflections. Let's get started. The one thing that every Indian must despise and lament and consider it a personal tragedy of the most unbearable kind, the most heartbreaking kind, if the Rahul Baiters are to be believed, is being born into a distinguished and good family. Perhaps Rahul has been vilified, trolled, denounced, degraded most for belonging to the Nehru Gandhi family stock. It is nobody's argument that this family is a family of crooks, a family of nitwits, incompetent, useless people, self-seeking, people who did not care for the country and made no contributions to it, people who did not make any positive impact on national consciousness, or a people who did not take any risks in order to serve the country. Even the worst enemies, the worst critics of this family would agree that it is a family that served India with great devotion and distinction. And yet, it is made out so valiantly, eloquently, emphatically that belonging to this family is the greatest demerit that a young person can ever think of. So, the sum and substance of the denunciation of the Parivarvad as applicable only to Rahul Gandhi is that he belongs to a devoted family, a distinguished family who rendered devoted service to the country, and 2 of them became martyrs to the cause of India. If soldiers die for India fighting for the country, quite understandably and naturally, we respect them, we value them. If anybody else dies for the country, we will celebrate them. But if members of this family give their life to the nation, it constitutes a very bad tradition, which the citizens of India for generations to come are obliged to despise. I'm sure you're impressed with the logic of this, and I'm quite convinced that you agree with the Rahul Baiters that he has to be condemned for belonging to this family and all his merits must be despised and more despised as he proves that he is more and more meritorious. And even the fact that he has got some rare qualities, he must be even more uh, viciously despised, damned, condemned, cast out. So, this is one thing that we are all obliged to accept. And not agreeing with this is, as I am now being told, very anti national. So, no further explanation is required. So, let's move on to the next item that we all Indians actually naturally despise. And that is any connection with what is foreign. Now, Sonia Gandhi is a citizen of India. And as per the Indian law, as per the constitution, even though she was born in Italy, she suffers from no disqualification or ineligibility on account of having been born elsewhere. So many people have acquired Indian citizenship. And once you acquire the citizenship of India, you are not to be considered a second class citizen because we don't have several classes of citizens. Even thinking of citizenship of different orders of merit militates against the most fundamental provisions of the Indian Constitution, namely the right to equality and the right to be protected against discrimination. But it is considered a very valorous and patriotic thing to despise Sonia Gandhi, even though she has proved herself to be a very devoted wife, an even more devoted daughter-in-law to the previous Prime Minister of India, a lady who has adopted all the Hindu customs, though she is still vilified as a Christian. Um, and above all, the label of having been a foreigner hangs heavy on her. Now, to some extent, this also happened to Mother Teresa, but to a far lesser extent. Now, let's consider a couple of facts in connection with this. Why is it that in India, apart from this one instance, everything foreign is valued far above everything Deshi? After all, if there is a car which is purely Indian make, as in the case of, say, the Tata cars, compare a Tata car or put a Tata car and say a comparable in terms of price line Honda or Toyota or any foreign made car. Which car would you choose? Even without testing it out, you'll buy a car of foreign origin because Indians are traditionally in love with anything foreign. Or think of a family in which there are two sons, one is employed abroad. Let it be even a Middle East job, a very ordinary, mediocre Middle East job. And the other son, shall we say, is a distinguished professor in an Indian university. Who do you think will be respected in the society? By the bank, where both have the accounts, and even more in their own homes. Quite unambiguously, it will be the person employed foreign. Or suppose you have two sons. One son married an Indian girl, and the other son married an American girl, or a British girl, or a French girl. Which son or which daughter in law will carry greater weight? About which daughter in law will you feel more respectful? Certainly about the foreign daughter in law, right? Or take another example. Have you ever seen our beloved, revered, redoubtable Prime Minister hugging any Indian political leader? Anyone? even shaking hands with their fellow Indian political leader of great distinction, proven track record, like Sharad Pawar, for example. I have not seen it, but how spontaneously he hugs a Putin, a Trump, a Biden, or a Boris Johnson, or what have you. Why is it? It's because of the Indian psychology. If you hug an Indian, you lose your merit. If you hug a foreigner, you gain merit. You can borrow merit from. This is our real psychology, but you're not supposed to apply that to just one person or one family, which family it is, I don't have to mention. For everything else, foreign is the best. In this case alone, it is the worst. So Indians are to imbibe this value system. Now let's consider the third. The one thing that no Indian should do at peril of death and destruction, fire and brimstone, is self-improvement. As I have said on occasions before, the most improved politician in India, in every respect, is Rahul Gandhi. I wrote an article carried by the Telegraph from Calcutta about 3 years ago, saying the same thing. Rahul Gandhi is the most improved politician in India in respect of every parameter of self-improvement. And yet, the more he improved, the more vigorously he was ridiculed and maligned. Now, therefore, from this, if a young person is to watch all this, the young people all over India, the growing generation, they would come to the conclusion that it's a terrible thing, it's a great crime against a nation to improve oneself. So stay mediocre. If anything, go backwards, but never go forward, never improve yourself. Look at the improvement in the oratorical skills of Rahul Gandhi. It's amazing. Compare his present level of public communication with what it was 10 years ago. There's a difference between day and night. Well, look at even the change in the timbre of his voice. His voice 10 years ago was so different, so unconvincing. Today, it carries tremendous sonal adjective sound, sonal weight. When he speaks, each word carries weight. That's called improvement. Look at the improvement in the content that he presents through every speech. Look at the way he organizes his ideas. I've been in education for more than 4 decades. I tell you, it's very rarely, if at all, that you come across someone who works so hard at improving himself or herself and makes such significant, dramatic progress in that respect. But if you do so, you will be attacked, you will be vilified. So the message that is communicated to the children and to the youth of India is, don't improve yourself. It's a terrible thing to do. And that's called patriotism, right? So that's the third thing Indians are required or obliged to despise most. Now let's look at the fourth. And I said, this is a terrible thing indeed. Do not ever, if you are a politician in particular, this applies to all people, but more acutely to politicians. If we are to go by Rahul Baiters, do not for God's sake become pro-people. Don't care for the people. Don't talk about their needs, their problems. And most of all, do not be seen with the poor, the ordinary folks. Keep a maximum distance from them. Be hypocritical in paying lip service to them, but never be with them in the hours of their pain, their sorrow, their bewilderment, helplessness, their terror, and be cynical about them. Have no respect for their worths. After all, human worth is to be measured only with the scale of money. poor people have no worth. So, being pro people is a terrible thing, something that no politician should do. It's a sin, it's a crime for which capital punishment alone will suffice. Do not become pro people. Because, as you know, as you've seen yourself, Rahul Gandhi is most ridiculed for being pro people, and especially for being with the poor, the old, the powerless. Remember how, even in the parliament, he was sneered at by Amit Shah ji for being seen with a poor old woman, Kalyani or somebody, I forget the name, and the contempt that was spouted on him. So the message goes very loud and clear to the youth of India. Dislike the people of India, and in particular the poor, the elderly, the powerless, people who have no sheen and shine, and be seen with the Adanis and the Ambanis. Showcase yourself on their social glittering ceremonies. Be at their beck and call. So keep the maximum distance from the ordinary folks of India, children of Mother India. Out of sheer love for Mother India, despise the children of Mother India. So this is something that all Indians are now required to imbibe as a lesson in the new brand of patriotism. Now let's consider the fifth most despicable thing which we are to zealously avoid. That is, do not show any capacity for endurance and patience. That is, patient endurance. My dear friends, I don't have to tell you that if you and I were in Rahul Gandhi's shoes, we would have fled from the scene a long time ago. I remember the great Pandit of Indian psephology, Mr. Prashant Kishore, being interviewed by a journalist, Rajdeep Sardeshai. And he was asked the question as to what was the strongest point about Rahul Gandhi. He said his capacity to endure against odds. He said, look at the way he has endured. He has been losing elections one after the other and being lambasted for it each time he lost the elections. And he also went on to say that if the Prime Minister of the country, Shri Narendra Modi, had lost even a single election the way Rahul Gandhi has lost these elections, most comprehensively, most disastrously, he would not have survived a single experience of that kind. And yet, Rahul Gandhi must be ridiculed, vilified, lambasted, degraded, abused for enduring. And yet, all our ancient seers and sadhus have taught us to endure. Endure privations. Do not give in and give up. Do not be a coward. Do not be a sensitive plant. Stand your ground. When the storm beats against you, stand your ground. Like a tree that is deeply rooted in the soil. Stand your ground. Persevere. Perseverance pays. Because it's only through perseverance that we can improve ourselves. Perseverance is like the furnace in which gold is purified of all its dross, and the pure, shining metal comes out at the end of the ordeal. And I haven't seen endurance and perseverance to this extent that Rahul Gandhi has exemplified in the last 15 years in anyone else, to tell you the truth. But we are required to despise it, denounce it, and consider that to be a blot on the nation, right? And one more evil quality, despicable thing which all Indians are required to renounce and despise, going by the detractors of Rahul, and I would have done my list. Don't be courageous. The courage that Rahul Gandhi has shown so far amazes me. I tell you, amazes me. Do you think it's possible, leave alone easy, do you think it's possible to be pitted against an almighty election machine like what the BJP has come to be, especially led so dramatically and heroically with such devastating effect by the Modi Amit Shah combined, with all the awesome resources at their disposal, including money, media, majoritarian self assertion and triumphalism, all the rest of it. You can't possibly imagine a young politician being pitted against odds so great that it can strike chill into your spine. And look at the valor with which this young man has fought it all. And now nearly prevailed, nearly. The battle is nearly won. Not won yet, but he's well on the way to winning it. That's called courage. Courage to endure in the midst of the extreme odds against which one has to work. Now, if you were to ask the stormtroopers of the BJP camp, they would tell you that the items I have shared with you, let me quickly review them. I first referred to belonging to a distinguished family which rendered devoted service to the country. It's a terrible thing. The worst tragedy that can happen to you is to be born into such a family. God forbid that you and I were born into very mediocre families. So that's the one thing that all of us must despise. Somebody being born into a family devoted and distinguished in the service of the nation. The second thing I pointed out was any distant connection with what is foreign. All of us despise foreign, except when it comes to consumer goods, jobs, even the language. If speaking a foreign language is a great distinction today, or entertaining a foreign tourist. If an Indian tourist and a foreign tourist come to you, which tourist would you serve on priority even today? Both of them will be paying the same amount, but you will serve the foreign tourist first. So, have not only that you should not have anything to do with things foreign, you must despise any even distant connection or suggestion of being foreign. The third thing is, do not improve yourself. Stay mediocre. Don't take one step forward. If anything, go backwards, like the crab. Shakespeare says, progress like the crab backwards, because it's a crime against the nation to improve yourself. The fourth thing is, this is a terrible thing. Don't ever be pro-people, particularly don't be pro-poor. Terrible, inexcusable, unforgivable. The fifth thing is, do not endure at the sight of the earliest difficulty or things going bad. Take to your heels and run with maximum athleticism, and never be seen on the stage thereafter. And finally, be a coward. Be a coward. Don't have courage. Don't stand your ground. When you see the clouds gathering over the distant horizon, just run for life. Don't stand there and be buffeted by the wind and the rain. So these are the great suggestions that have been given to the people of India. And I feel worried about this because my life has been spent in serving the youth of India. And as a teacher, I feel that the society as a whole does a terrible disservice to the children and the youth of India by injecting them with this kind of poisonous negativity, which can only serve to stifle and choke, strangulate their spirit. If this is the kind of stuff to which they are exposed day in and day out, not one day, not 10 days, not 10 months, 15 years and counting, then I'm terribly worried for India. People don't know the consequences, the deadly, devastating consequences of what they do, and the kind of toll it takes on public morale and the character of a nation when they pursue certain mean minded peanut motives. They are actually setting fire to the house they live in. The future of India is being desecrated. The sanctuary of the future of India is being desecrated. The young people growing up in our country cannot but be influenced by this kind of massively organized and consistently orchestrated campaign of vilification with the ingredients that I have listed and many more, day in and day out. This is the reason, friends, why I thought, in spite of having no political allegiance, I would take a stand. I'm not taking a stand on behalf of Rahul Gandhi or Congress Party or India Gadabandhan. I couldn't care less. I'm taking a stand on behalf of the children and the youth of India. That is also to say, I'm saying something on behalf and for the sake of the future of India. We'll create an unlivable society if this goes on and on like this. Everyone who cares for tomorrow has to take a stand, vigorous stand, bold, uncompromising stand against this. The soul of India is being poisoned. Our future is being set fire to. And this is a terrible act of vandalism. Unfortunately, it is being undertaken under the auspices of patriotism. And that's a terrible thing. Let me conclude by saying, if I were to begin my life all over again, the 6 anti-national demerits I have listed in connection with Rahul Gandhi and the orchestrated vilification of the young man. If I were to begin my life all over again, these are the 6 qualities I will cultivate, except one, foreign origin, foreign association, which I can't because that's biological. And biological has now all sorts of political overtones. I don't want to go into that. These are admirable qualities. These are the qualities that will take us far into the future, and not the mean-minded poison that's being spouted day in and day out in order to secure some fleeting political gains. It's a terrible, terrible thing. But I have great faith in the destiny of India. I have faith in the good sense of the people of India. They will realize that this act of vandalism is a crime against their children and their grandchildren. They will rise up and defeat this, and we'll soon emerge from the murky atmosphere and live to see the brighter tomorrow. That's our birthright. Jai Hind. Vande Mataram. Vande Mataram.